we're back with one more block of Tuesday Weekend for you this week. This one is the worst messes that we have seen, and there have been some doozies, I will say. I'm actually going to start with one that I didn't even write on the list. The one time I came closest to actually crying in the kitchen is the restaurant in New York City that I was working, where the prep kitchen was down in the basement, and I had 3 hours of prep work that I had just finished on a sheet tray and was carrying it up the stairs, tripped on the stairs, knocked over, just lost all of it, and had about 20 minutes to recover before service was going to start, and it was bad. The dishwasher was the one actually doing the cleaning for me because I had to get all my prep done again.
Yeah.
But anyway, Nick, behind the bar, we'll start with, coworkers, as opposed to customer created messes.
Yeah, I'm just going to stick with coworkers because we could go all day on customer created messes, and we kind of have already.
Sure.
Brand new jar of maraschino cherries.
Yay. Ooh, they're sticky too.
It got better because it wasn't just on the floor. It hit the half of the ice bin. So glass, cherries, sticky stuff all over the ice bin, all on the floor, in the mats.
Oh, gross.
10 minutes before open.
Of course, because that's the only time to do it.
Hey, you got these? And I turn around and it slips out of the guy's ice. I'm like, no, just I'm all, get everybody. Just get it. Let's start cleaning it. Get everybody. We got to open.
Yeah,
it was in a nightclub where you had to do doors. That one, I was like, oh, it's just cherries and stuff. And I don't think people understand that sugar syrup in that stuff.
Walking back and forth through that all night, it will get everywhere.
It had to be entirely cleaned up. We had to take the mats outside and power wash those off. Like, they brought those back halfway through service.
Yeah. Oh, gee. So one of the places in New York where I was cooking, we were going into a brunch service, and chef knocked over a 5-gallon bucket of mixed eggs because, the day before, the prep guy takes the whole eggs and cracks them, mix them up, so that way for omelets and stuff, it's real.
You're just scoop, yeah.
And as it spread across the cooler floor, the edges were hardening. And if you've ever tried to clean a single egg up off the floor, it's not the easiest task. And when you have 5 gallons worth of it, it took a couple of hours for them to get it all cleaned up. And that was I felt terrible. But also, that was basically everyone on the line then started grabbing, we got another case of eggs, and we're just cracking them on our stations to try to get, enough eggs to get there. Oh, that was bad. But
simple syrups and stuff like that, shrubs. Bottles break. When specific bottles break, that can be bad. One of the most expensive ones I saw was one of my managers at a job didn't realize that the Louis XIII bottle is a crystal decanter. It is not glass, so it is very fragile, and he broke it.
Oh, no.
But he broke like the top port. It was a weird fracture, so it wasn't like it didn't shatter. So he had the bottom of it, but he was like trying to hold all the liquor and stuff. He's like, "Give me a bucket so we can filter this." And I'm just standing there like, "No, throw it away."
Yeah. No, absolutely not.
I'm like, dude, throw that away.
Microscopic glass. You don't want to risk sending that down somebody's digestive system. No.
Yeah, and crystal breaks different.
Yeah,
it's like paper, like razor thin shards you can't see and stuff. Cause he got into a box like, let's filter it. And I'm like, okay. So we filtered it, and then I'm like, he's like, well, there's almost nothing there. And I'm like, oh yeah. And we had a black bar top, and I flipped the filter over on the bar top and took it back, and he just shiny. He's like, what? I'm like, that's all the glass that's in there. And we didn't get all the glass that's in there.
Maybe
we're not doing this.
Maybe a coffee filter, but no, I'm not.
No, that's what we were using.
Ideas. Oh,
no, we used a coffee filter, and it was still just like, I'm like, dude, look, we can't do this. I'm like, I'm literally pouring it down the sink, and he's like, do you know how much that bottle costs? And I'm like, yeah. It happens, man.
It happens.
Move on.
I will say, when I was cooking in Italy, I was mopping the back storage room and kind of half slipped, and so grabbed onto the storage shelf just to steady myself. And of course, what gets knocked off isn't the can of tomatoes. It is the €110 bottle of truffle oil next to it. And chef learned about that when about 15 minutes later, the smell of it had wafted into her office, which was not nearby because I mean it was so pungent and so fragrant that it just kind of so that was probably the most expensive mistake I've made in that regard.
That's
but
bad.
But then all right, so the worst smell I have ever encountered in a professional kitchen when I was at the ski resort in Park City, though not PCMR, you can figure out which one I mean. At the end of the ski season, we closed down the kitchen, usually mid-April. And then to begin the summer season, usually the first or second week in June, we go back in, turn everything on, make sure all the equipment is working. And throughout the spring is when the engineering department is supposed to come through and deep clean everything. Might have missed one item on the list, but it wasn't even me. I was on the other end of the kitchen, but my chef goes to the steamer and opens the door, gets it open about that far, slams it shut again. Mm-hmm. Somebody had left an entire hotel pan of black beans in the steamer for, I mean, at that point, it was about 7 weeks. And basically, I mean, I had on my desk, even back then, an N95 mask that I kept for basically when I had to grind horseradish. And so just like, wait, I'm at least the best prepared for this. Put that sucker on, threw like a tablecloth over it and ran it outside and just like straight into the dumpster. But it was so foul. It was just, oh, gross.
I've got two. They tied in my book. So one was at Harrio's during Sundance. Me and another fine bartending gentleman is a good friend of mine, always worked at the same bar together. And we opened the dishwasher and I don't know what died in the dishwasher slammed it shut immediately. And the bar back's like, yeah, that dishwasher, we haven't used that dishwasher in like 6 months. And I'm like, get it the fuck out of here. And he's like, well, no, I'm like, no, we're coming in tomorrow. We're disconnecting this and putting it outside. This cannot be behind this bar. I don't know what's in there. Like I had it taped shut. I was going to call one of the guys from the ski resort down to just come, just metal tap it shut so people couldn't, because there was I'm used to bad smells like I grew up hunting and fishing and stuff. You clean a deer, it doesn't smell great. This smelled a million times worse than that.
Yep.
The other one was, of course, it's COVID related. So when COVID hit, I was actually, of all places, in Puerto Vallarta racing sailboats. Go figure. And I get a text, hey, they're closing everything down here. And I'm like, okay, so good to know. And so I text the managers, because I've never really wanted to be a manager like that where I have to wear a tie and whatever. I've done it before. It sucks. That's why I never want to do it. I'm like, okay, here's your closing procedures for the bar. Because it's California. We're obviously going to be closed. I knew we were going to be closed for at least 2 or 3 months. And I'm like, I get to the draft. Okay, all the draft beers. Disconnect all the draft beers. Run all the lines clean. If you have a draft kit, hook up water and clean out all the lines before you leave. Or call one of the reps and say, hey, can you come run our lines before we shut down so that the lines are all cleared out? So we go back to open and stuff, and it's been about 3 months. We reopened July 31st. We closed in March.
Right.
Go back. We're setting the bar up in first week of July and getting everything. And we also had a glycol system on our lines, and that was turned off because you're not going to leave that running if the lines aren't done. Well, they didn't do the lines or anything. They didn't disconnect any of the kegs. Nothing. So we're behind the bar and stuff, and then our bar manager comes out and he's like, okay, I got the kegs all turned on. And I'm like, did you disconnect them? And he's like, well, I don't see why. And I'm like, don't. And he pulls the tap, and this blackish sludge comes out of the tap. And then he pulls another one, and it's the same thing. And it's beer that's been in the lines, unrefrigerated, in a building that is on the beach in the summer for 3 months. And he's like, and then he closes it. I'm like, you didn't do anything I told you to do on that, did you? And he's like, well, no, it didn't seem like. I'm like, this is why we have to replace our entire beer lines. He's like, we can clean them. I'm like, no.
Not at this point.
I'm like, and people are leaving the restaurant that we're cleaning. Like our coworkers are all going outside because they're about to puke because it smells so bad. And I'm like, dude, that's what the beer is going to taste like. We have to replace everything now. And we've got to get this toxic mess cleaned up as well.
That actually does remind me of one thing that should have been on the gross thing list, and that is the taps for the soda fountains too. Like the little,
dude, those You have to clean those. The big one that always gets me is the one behind the bar, because no one ever cleans that damn thing.
No.
You have to take it off. You have to wipe it out. You have to soak it. And the other
soak
thing,
your gun.
well, you soak your gun for 20 minutes. You don't soak it all night. That's,
Sure.
I'll come in and it's like, okay, all these seals, you push it like it sprays out sideways and stuff. But yeah, the soda guns, the soda stuff always has to be cleaned always. The beer, like when we were saying beer taps before, your rep or you need to actually run your lines, which means drain all the beer, run hot water and soap and cleanser through them, and then run water through them to get that out, and then rehook the beer. Mm-hmm. It's not just doing the little taps at the end and saying, oh, it's clean. That's at my current job, that's kind of a big deal because our beer lines run through about 1.5 stories of solid concrete and steel, because where our cooler is now is where a vault was back in the 20s.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Oh, we have some of the coldest beer in San Diego because it's encased in concrete underground. And it's got a glycol system. So I mean that beer, people are like, that's a really cold beer. And I'm like, yeah, I actually like our draft beers quite a bit. Cool. I wish I could drink any of them because we're not allowed to drink there as employees.
At the casino I'm at, we used to be able to, but then a couple of the higher level managers were taking advantage of that. So the right got taken away from all of us. And all right, I get it. But
I see it a lot in wet bars where you can drink behind the bar while you're working, and then all of a sudden no one can drink for like a month or two because they'll have that. And I've been there when I've seen them, like, these people are wrecked. Yeah. And then, the 2 days later, you want to do a shot? We're not allowed to drink. I'm like, oh yeah, is it because it's Sunday? And they're like, you were here, and I'm like, for 4 hours.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, and I'm like, that's why you're not allowed to drink for a while. Yep. I'm like, you were serving me. We talked for a long time. So, but yeah, like the mess stuff like that is just the stuff that we're describing. It's hard to describe to people because unless you know the consistencies of like the egg thing, like Josh said, go in your kitchen, just drop an egg on the floor and see how easy that is to clean up. Now imagine 5 gallons of that.
Exactly. I mean,
maraschino cherry stuff. The closest I could come with that is get in your fridge. If you keep it there or in your cupboard, take out some maple syrup.
Yeah, just kind of pour it over the counter and the floor.
And if you have a mat in your kitchen by the sink, get it on your mat too.
There you go. Yep.
And then picture doing 5 gallons of that with cherries every day. And the smell that's not going to leave for a few days.
Oh, geez. No. Nope.
Just,
that actually kind of brings me to I won't say this is the worst mess I have seen in a dining room, but it was, as a customer, maybe still one of my favorite experiences I had in a restaurant. And that was my mom and I were in a restaurant in San Juan, Puerto Rico, beautiful tile floors. Mm-hmm. And the kid at the table next to us knocked a full bottle of ketchup in a glass bottle onto the tile. And it was, we've all heard the sound of glass breaking, but this was so much fuller. It was a beautiful sound, and I wanted to recreate just the noise it made. But also, ketchup with shards of glass in it, that's fun to clean. That's in there. I'm not going to take the bar towel to that one. Nope.
That is the go back in the kitchen, find a box, tear the sides of the box off,
get the cardboard
it up together like that, get the cardboard, make sure all the glass is out of it, get a couple of towels.
Right, and then
so there's the bottom one and then the top one, so you don't. If there's glass left, I remember those days.
Oh geez, and this is actually, it works with the cleaning thing, and breaking glass. I have the bad habit of picking broken glass up with my hands, and part of it is I spent long enough in the kitchen that I have pretty tough skin on my fingers, so it doesn't very easily cut. But also, it's not the best habit that I have.
I do the same thing just because I'm so used to working with glass all the time. It's just like pick. And then anything smaller,
I'm cautious about it.
Yeah. You got to be super careful, but it's got to be cleaned up all the same. It's like I had a glass break a couple of weeks ago behind the bar, and I just 1 second, stopped service, picked up the main piece of the glass, grabbed the other big parts of the glass, took my phone out, flashed around to make sure there's no super gougy things that I had to worry about at that time because there was a mat there, and I'm like, I'll at least be above that. Threw it away, went back to service, and then pulled the mats and swept up the rest of the glass. That's just kind of. I've also had a glass break while I was washing it in a 3 sink in my hand.
Oh, that's no fun.
Yeah, that was fun because I'm like, ow, that hurt. And I pull my hand out and look at it like this. Like I'm looking at my palm, like, okay. And then I turn and look at the back of my hand and there's like a 3/4 inch shard of glass sticking out of the middle of my middle finger. And I'm like, all right. And I turn to my bartender or partner and go like, hey, can you pull this out for me? And she looked at my finger and then just runs off the bar to the bathroom. And I'm like,
okay, no.
Okay, it's a little blood. I get it. But yeah, no problem. So then I turn to my manager and he does the same damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, fine, turn back around, pull it out. It actually sprays. I'm like, Jesus, wrap my hand in a towel, have it behind my back, just standing behind the bar, like, hey, we'll be with you in just 1 second. And they come back. I'm like, can you make these people some drinks so I can go deal with this?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, why aren't you making drinks? And I'm like, we'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
Because no one wants that.
I had
like you were saying, the whole thing in the kitchen with the blood. I was actually watching a kicking show and one of the guys cut himself. And then still presented. He cut himself like, well, here, and they're like, we can't eat the food because you cut yourself in your station. Yeah. You can't.
Right.
Like the one guy's like, did you actually think that we would even taste this after you cut yourself and probably bled in some
somewhere?
Yeah. And the guy's like, well, I just figured. And they're like, you might want to go back to school or not do this anymore if you just figured that was okay.
Or whatever county you live in. Hey, health commissioner, come on over. You might want to just have a chat.
Come talk to Brian while he's making your hamburger.
Right. Well, and actually, because I had thought of bringing up health departments. One of the guys that I used to have regular inspections from when I was in Park City, his whole thing was, I'm not here to punish you. I'm here just to make sure that all of the regulations are being followed. All I want is people to practice the right, if I see something wrong, I'm not going to try to, my goal is not to shut you guys down. That's not why I'm here. I want to make sure that your clientele remains healthy or, at least minimizes the risk of foodborne illness and all the rest. And that's the right attitude. I hope more or most of the health commissioners or at least health inspectors out there kind of feel that way.
We always got the health commissioner who was Mormon and hated bars in Park City.
My last year at the ski resort, the executive chef of the lodge that I was working in had this incredible ability to just bullshit with the health inspector back in the office for 15 or 20 minutes about his daughter's soccer game or whatever, while we're frantically making sure that we're all in compliance on the floor, and just that's, again, for the chefs, for the managers out there, that's your job. You buy that 5 minutes
at that time.
Yep.
Well, it's like the restaurant job I had. We had 2 bars. I was there for about 6 years. My bar never got dinged once in a health department until I left.
Yeah.
And then they got 4 marks 2 weeks after I left, and I'm like, what did they have done to that bar in 2 weeks to get 4 downgrades on it?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's just keep your stuff clean.
Yeah. As I have mentioned in the past, I worked for a while at a fish counter at a grocery store. And if you do not pull up those panels and clean underneath every week or so, it will be pretty obvious pretty quickly. But that's all I'm going to say on that one. But I also wanted to throw an honorable mention out there to whoever mopped the floor of the walk-in freezer. Excellent. Just well done. Well done. I want to see what other, how your just overall life decision-making process goes through, because I'm just curious, but yeah. And if you've never had the joy of scraping ice off of a corrugated
metal
freezer floor,
yeah,
it's a treat. But anyway, that basically wraps up what I have about messes. Nick, if you want to throw any last thoughts?
They suck, but the fun and I usually break them so I don't have them behind my bar. But blender messes are always fantastic.
Oh, geez, blenders.
Because half the time you don't have a lid, or you're not paying attention, or someone's not paying attention, and the next thing you know, that strawberry daiquiri is now over the bar, the guests, the wall, your wine rack of expensive wine bottles, where you're like, okay, that's fantastic. Yeah, blender messes are always a lot of fun. That's why I tend to break blenders when I move on to a bar. And for those of you out there who want to know how to do this, it's very simple. You go underneath, you take off the little metal panel, you reach inside, and you just disconnect one of the wires. Don't cut the wire, just disconnect one of the wires. Put the panel back on, and then tell your owner or manager, hey, this blender's not working. They're not going to try to fix it, and they're cheap. So they are instead going to send the blender back to the manufacturer and wait anywhere from 6 weeks to a year to get that blender back.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
That's how you get rid of your blender.
So I will also say, if you are looking for a career and that pays decently, emergency oven repair. When I was in New York, I mean, those guys are making like $300 an hour. You know, like it's you're making lawyer cash if you could come in the middle of a busy service and 40 minutes later the oven's working again. First of all, you're a hero. Thank you. But also, like you can. If you're looking for a career, you get some pretty good pay for that.
Paid.
Okay, and then I wanted to finish this episode with a little thing I think we should try to do every week, and that is shout out to a restaurant out there in the world that we think you should check out if you're in the area. And I am going to start at the top left of the map. I will shout out Conscious Coffee in Talkeetna, Alaska, and specifically thank you to Justine. She saved my morning that morning. But if you're up in Talkeetna, I'm not sure there are very many bad food options, but definitely check out Conscious Coffee.
Well, mine is just going to be actually more of an RIP restaurant. Steakhouse named Kitty Pap's Steakhouse in Bountiful, Utah. It was opened in 1933. Recently just closed. I have eaten there since I was an infant. My parents went there after I was born for their first dinner out. Kitty Pappas took me back in the kitchen while my parents had a nice quiet meal, and I'm sure I cried my ass off.
Yep.
Some of the best Greek steaks I've ever had, pounded out flat, fresh garlic on top, made her own Roquefort dressing. I mean, and just like a little roadside kind of roadhouse type of place. Her son, George, was the waiter there the entirety that I ate there. He's 10 years older than me. So he was literally, when I was a kid, he was working there when he was like 14.
Wow.
Sad to see it go. Truly iconic place. I mean, from the 30s to the 20s, that's a pretty good run.
Yeah, for real.
Especially in
this industry.
Yeah. In this industry, you just don't see that. Secondarily, there's another great steakhouse I heard closed out in Kansas City called the Majestic. I was fortunate enough to eat there. I was on a 3-day trip and ate there twice. Their Scotch list alone, I could have stayed there for days. Now, it used to be a hotel, and in the top floor used to be the brothel.
Oh, fun.
So they had a basement where they had live jazz. They had a regular steakhouse on the middle floor, and the top floor was Scotch and cigars. And that place was literally also majestic. So 2 places you can't get, and I like starting this up where we can tell you places, hey, go try this place, because that really cool place that has the cool dish that you want to tell your friends about, but you kind of forget all the time. In this day and age, it might not be there that long.
Right. Absolutely.
And in the comments too, if you got a restaurant you want to shout out or you want us to check out, and believe me, if it's in my hometown, absolutely. I will go check it out.
If I'm within a couple 100 miles of it, all right, maybe give me a couple months, but I will try to make my way there.
Absolutely.
Because I love food. If you don't love food, good luck in life.
Exactly. If you don't love food, you're just, I don't know, crash into a bridge abutment. I don't know.
Yeah, right. All right. Well, thank you once again. Like, subscribe, tell your friends about it. You know, we would love to make this a regular, long-term, ongoing thing, because we really enjoy talking about these subjects, and I hope they're interesting to all of you listeners too. So thank you, and join us again next week.
Da-da-da.
All right. Have a good night.